Hello and welcome, or welcome back to the All Round Sports Podcast, the podcast that talks about all round sports news. I am your host, Gemma, and I'm joined by my co host, Tom. This week's podcast will look into the action from a range of sports as we look back on what was an interesting weekend of sport. We'll start this podcast with the Rugby League, and it's the final preparations now for the World Cup. And there's a lot of teams that are looking strong going into this, and we'll definitely see who the favourites are going into that. There's going to be some tough games within the World Cup. Wales were beaten by Lebanon 22-38. Scotland lost to England Knights 28-4. France lost to Tonga 12-48. And also in the International Challenge match, Leeds Rhinos lost against New Zealand 47-0. But the big game of the preparation World Cup games was England playing Fiji. They won 50-0 and they looked very dominant throughout the whole game. And Fiji struggled to get the ball into England's 20, and they had very little of the ball there. What were your thoughts on that game?
I think it was a really good performance for England. I appreciate it wasn't a fully fledged Fijian side. They have a couple more players. I think three more players joining them from the NRL final for the World Cup next Saturday, which will help them. But still, nevertheless, it wasn't a fully fledged England side either, and they were very convincing. As you said, running out 50-0 winners. Really promising. We had some debutants play extremely well. Dominic Young, man of the match performance for him. He's probably the star of the show, scoring a try and also setting up a couple others as well. But it also tries for the other two debutants as well, Andy Ackers and Joe Batchelor. So some really promising signs for England there, and it will instill some confidence in a fan base which haven't been too convinced by this sort of England setup going into the World Cup. Of course, they have a really big test next Saturday, starting off the group against Samoa. I think whoever wins that game will probably top the group, with France and Greece making up the other two in Group A. So yeah, massive game for England. Obviously, really looking forward to it. Live on the BBC, as all the games are across the tournament. So yeah, 2:30 kickoff should be a good one.
Definitely agree with you. England are looking very strong going into it, and let's hope they can reach semi-finals because we've gone and bought tickets for the semi-finals of the World Cup now.
Yes, definitely. Hopefully, we'll see them. We're going to the Emirates, which is one of the few games, I think the only game actually happening south of Birmingham. So it should be a good occasion. I'm really hoping we'll see England there, and it's looking very likely that if England do reach there, they'll have a slightly more favourable draw with Australia and New Zealand both on the other side. England are very likely to meet, a slightly weaker nation. Although, as we all know, rugby league is growing globally, which is really good to hear. And it could well be another sort of Australasian island there, with Tonga, Papua New Guinea, and the Cook Islands all making up Group D, along with Wales there.
Yeah, definitely. There's also been some other news as well. I hear there's been some changes made being made, to the Super League as well.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time, hopefully for rugby league anyway, a sport which has struggled slightly recently. It has not quite such a lucrative fan base as some other sports or its rugby union counterparts as well. So hopefully these changes will be positive. I know that they're really looking at revamping it to be more sort of like a franchise system like they had before. Now, this could cause a lot of controversy and negativity among sort of traditional rugby league fans, but something does need to be done. Numbers are dwindling, and teams are really struggling financially to stay afloat following the pandemic. So the main changes they're looking at is actually scrapping relegation, which is quite a controversial decision in any sport, and actually looking at teams changing based on their sort of abilities on and off the field. So some interesting decisions there, sort of going towards a more Australian or American model. And also they're looking at limiting the amount of French sides as well within the division. So they're looking at just two, which I presume will be Castle and Dragons and Toulouse Olympic, which I think, whilst it might strengthen domestic rugby, could be a bit of a problem for the French setup, which is still very much in its infancy, really. We'll see. I know that they're looking at bringing in more French players, and they're going to put a cap on the amount of foreign players these teams can put in. But they're also going to make these French sides fund the English teams coming over, their travel expenses, which I think is going to be very tricky for them to do, especially as the fan base isn't massive out there in the south of France. So yeah, there's some interesting changes coming in for sure.
Definitely, I'm not sure if I agree with them scrapping relegation, because I think relegation's an important thing. If teams aren't fully up to the standard of the league, then they should be relegated. I mean, only the best teams should go forward within the league. So I don't think they should scrap relegation. I think that's a bad decision.
Yeah, I think that generally speaking, I would agree. Whilst I still think something needs to be done. I mean, what they've done is they partnered with IMG. They've got a strategic partnership in place for the next 12 years, and these changes will start to be implemented from 2024. So we've got a little bit more time to go, and I know they're scrapping the Magic Weekend as well, which has been proved to be really popular. And they're going to look at one positive change, I think, which is really important, is they're going to look at really establishing a London side. Something which rugby league desperately needs is to crack the capital. Obviously, they've attempted before with various different people. Richard Branson, most recently, trying to bring a successful London team, but it's really not worked. IMG have come out and they do believe that there's a potential fan base there. The participation numbers are high, but at the moment, outside of the M62 corridor in the north of England, there really is very limited rugby league in England. So I'm really hopeful that these changes, whilst I don't agree with them all, will be a step in the right direction for rugby league as a sport domestically.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think breaking into London will be a big thing for the rugby league, and it's definitely something that's going to be needed because like you've previously said, past Birmingham there isn't much rugby league anyway. Like, it's seen as a very north sort of sport, whereas if you break into London, it's going to encourage a lot more people to get into it. As well as sort of youngsters as well that are getting into the sport. So I think it's a big thing for that.
Definitely. I mean, it's the poor cousin of rugby union, in this country overall, other than its stronghold in the north. So, I'm really hopeful that might well change in the near future, and there'll be a bit more of a split and a bit more of a growth for both sports, because rugby union obviously struggles in the north, and rugby league struggles in the south. So for us at the moment, living in the south, there's not really that much going on, not in the top tier anyway. I mean, we have a couple of championship sides, but I think having a really strong and competitive London-based side will really help to grow the game. And whilst I don't necessarily agree with the no relegation or the change in relegation system, I'm really hopeful that rugby league will continue to grow. And then one last point before we move on is they're also looking at restructuring the calendar to sort of optimise the international game, which I think is really important, because the international game is something, no matter where you are in the country, you can get behind your nation. I mean, like I said, we're going to go and watch a semi-final. We're obviously hoping England will be there. We can get behind an England side, where it's a lot harder for us to sort of go and support a team up in the north. For us to travel 4 or 5 hours away for home games, it's just unrealistic. So, a lot of people who potentially could get involved in rugby league might feel a bit more included if there is a team sort of in the south here, in the capital, for us to sort of get behind.
For sure. Thank you for that lovely insight into the rugby league. We'll move on to the rugby union now. The women are doing really well. England women. They also beat Fiji 84-19.
Not a good time to be a Fijian.
No, definitely not. England are the strong favourites going into into the international break there, and they had a very strong second half against Fiji, where they managed to come out on top. But their second half was the one that put them ahead more than they were before. Do you have any thoughts on that game?
Oh, England are looking really strong, and you have to say they on paper they're the favourites. I think their biggest challenge will come against New Zealand, who recorded a really big and important victory over Australia this weekend as well. So, New Zealand have the home advantage, but England have a slightly stronger side. So, that'll be a really interesting matchup for sure.
Definitely, England are definitely looking strong. So it's a good time to be English for rugby anyway. We'll see how it goes. Also, onto the rugby union, and the English women did very well. They also beat Fiji 84-19. England were very strong through that game as well, and they definitely had a more dominant second half than first half. They managed to come out on top of Fiji, and it's definitely a good time for English rugby anyway, and they're looking very strong going into the games.
Yeah, definitely a good time to be English. Not quite so. It's a good time to be Fijian at the minute. Whatever code or gender you're watching, not England winning both of those games very convincingly. But the England women look very impressive, and they really came alive in the second half. And I think that sort of shows the difference in fitness and professionalism as well. So it's a positive time for English rugby. I think that their biggest challenge will come against New Zealand hosts. I mean, they had a really impressive win against Australia, which was a very tricky game for them. England's slightly stronger on paper, but I do feel like with the home advantage in any form of rugby, it's very hard to rule out New Zealand.
There's also some other games that were played as well. They also played, I think Scotland played Wales.
Yeah, so Wales came out just on top on that one. I think it was 18 points to 15, so really close match, and really important in for the connotations there. Is it Group B? I believe they're in. So yeah, a big performance from the Welsh ladies. Very well done to them. And I think the other scores we saw in the Women's World Cup saw France convincingly beat South Africa as well. So some interesting starts to the tournament. I'm not quite sure if there's going to be any other team who can really sort of challenge England and New Zealand. I think France, you've got to give a slight outside chance to. Again, being rugby, they've always got a shot, but I think we will see one of those two nations prevail and lift the title.
Yeah, and France is England's next game for the women as well, which obviously will be a very good game, and we'll see how that fares up for them. New Zealand have Wales as well, which you'd fancy New Zealand's chances, I reckon, over Wales.
Yeah, I think so. I think Wales sort of battling for that second place spot and beating Scotland is gonna really help them there. I mean, I don't think anyone can really see anyone other than New Zealand topping that group.
No, definitely. Well, it's a good time for rugby union anyway. On to Premiership rugby as well. I promise we will stop talking about rugby in a second, but we'll just get through all the rugby first. Exeter beat Bristol 50-14 to go top of the table, and that was quite an interesting game there.
Yeah, Exeter really starting to find their feet now against a strong Bristol side. Really good day for the Exeter wingers as well, with Noel and Woodburn both crossed the line twice each. They're really convincing, putting 50 points past a strong Bristol side to go top.
Definitely, it's been a good time for them. Uh, Gloucester also beat Bath. I think Bath do remain bottom after that game.
Yeah, not a good time to be a Bath fan right now. I mean, that was a really important must-win game for them at home against Gloucester. So, with the exception of with Worcester, obviously have now been withdrawn from the league. Bath now, actually, I think Worcester were above them when they got withdrawn from the league. So Bath remain bottom of the table. Not a good time for them. They've really struggled recently, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon for them.
No, definitely not. And Sale beat Leicester, sorry, as well. 26-16. There are also some games that are currently being played as well. Saracens are currently 26-0 against Newcastle, and Wasps are beating Northampton 18-14. What do you reckon the outcomes of those games are going to be?
Well, as we all expected, it's looking very much like Saracens are going to go on to win that one, get the bonus point, convincing fashion, really. So, yeah, they're looking extremely strong. As for the Wasps and Northampton game, it's looking a lot closer. We're just approaching, so actually just after half time now, and like I said, 18-14 in favour of Wasps. It's an interesting game. I think Wasps with the home advantage will probably be able to hold out in what is going to be an interesting game. But yeah, just hoping that it'll stay competitive and Yeah, it'll be interesting to report back on your next podcast the end results. Then, what do you reckon?
I think Wasps will come out on top as well. They're looking quite strong with the rugby, and also agree on your thoughts with Saracens as well. Saracens are are doing very well, and also Wasps are not quite not doing quite so well, but they're doing a bit better than Bath.
Yeah, I mean that's not hard. I mean, obviously Bath the only team this season not to record a victory. Wasps obviously sitting slightly below Northampton in the table, still very early days, and they do have a game in hand as well. So, this would be an important win for Wasps, and hopefully they'll be able to sort of find a little bit of form now and turn what has been a bit of a poor start, already recording a couple losses early on in the season around.
Next, we're going to talk about the tennis. We're over the rugby, so we can talk about something different. Fritz beat Tiafoe 7-6, 7-6. It's been a very tight game with two very on-form players in the final of the Japanese Open. So that was both players were very on form, especially after the Labour Cup show, where both players managed to put in a good show. And Fritz is just breaking into the top 10 now with Tiafoe recording that big win over Rafa as well, both looking quite strong going into that. There was also the Astana Open, which is being played as well. There's been some big games in that where Tsitsipas beat Rublev after going a set down. He came back to win 6-3, 6-4 in the other two sets. Djokovic beat Medvedev after Medvedev retired after the second set due to a pulled leg muscle, which set up the final between Djokovic and Tsitsipas. Now, Djokovic managed to come out on top of that, 6-3, 6-4, giving him his 90th career title. He seems to be doing well when he's back on tour.
Yeah, I mean, it was never in doubt the 21-time Grand Slam champion. I mean, once I saw his name in the draw, I think it was clear that he was going to be a strong favourite in what was a very challenging tournament, ATP 500 event there, and he had to come through some tough tests, and obviously Medvedev having to withdraw, slightly disappointing end to that semi-final, but very convincing against Tsitsipas, who again, I think for the ninth consecutive time now finishes runner-up in one of these events. So, Djokovic up to title number 90, showing no signs of slowing down there. So, really, really good time for Novak Djokovic after what's been a really rough year and a bit for him there with the COVID issue. But he's now qualified himself for the ATP Tour Finals, and will go into that, I would imagine, a strong favourite despite his slightly lower seeding due to being absent for the majority of the last 12 months.
I still think he's, in a lot of people's eyes, despite his seeding being a bit lower, in most people's opinion, he's still the top seed for most people. And, he's definitely one of the favourites going into a lot of things. And, the top seed obviously now being Carlos Alcaraz, who, fair play to him, has won a Grand Slam. And, I think he will win a few more, but I don't think he'll, win 21 like the likes of Djokovic or Nadal or anyone like that.
It was a really poor start for the newly crowned world number one. I mean, he lost, I think it was only the fourth time since 2013. Here's a stat for you, when a lucky as losers beating the world number one. Do you want to have a go at naming the other players to do it?
I wouldn't know.
So obviously after this one, we had Novak Djokovic, who fell down as world number one, and Andy Murray has actually done it twice. But those are the only other two players to have lost to a lucky loser in a tournament as world number one.
Blimey, that's a crazy stat. Some useful information for tennis there. England had a good start to their test, beating Australia by 8 runs. Alex Hales, he was the star of the show here, getting 84 runs from 51 balls.
Yeah, both Alex Hales and the returning Joss Butler had a really strong partnership. 132 off just 11.2 overs there for those two combined. So really strong against what is a very, very good Australian side. And obviously, it's just a final test before the World Cup now. So 3-match series here, which England started off in fine fashion. So yeah, really, really pleased to see that. And obviously, it comes off the back of their 4-3 victory in Pakistan as well. So this England team looking like serious contenders now for this upcoming World Cup.
Definitely agree with you. There was also a controversial moment in this game as well, to do with Australia. Can you give us a bit more of an insight into that?
Yeah, so during the run chase for Australia, there was a very interesting moment when it was Matthew Wade who hit the ball high in the air, looking like an obvious catch, but he actually sort of blocked the England player coming in for the catch there, which was quite a strange moment. His left arm came out as he ran back to his crease. England decided not to appeal the decision, maybe out of respect for their opponents, but Australia cricket again getting some controversial headlines here, based on, and I would say that it was actually Mark Wood who was coming for the catch, and if it wasn't for the batter's interruption, I would have imagined he would have made a quite easy catch out of that one. So really strange, but thankfully didn't affect the end result of England winning by 8 runs.
Definitely not. It's very strange that England didn't appeal that though, because it doesn't seem to be something that would be in the rule set.
No, I mean we'll put the video up on our social media pages, and you can give us your thoughts on that one. But for me, it was an interesting decision not to appeal, and yeah, I think if it had gone to appeal, it should have gone out. But you could say the third umpire could have looked at about an appeal really, because it seemed pretty clear. I mean, Wade's left arm definitely came out, but yeah, we'll leave it up for you to decide. See what you think.
Definitely, that'll be going up in the next day or so. Just so you can all like and comment on that, just to let us know your opinions. But it's starting very strong for England, and they're looking very good. Going into the T20. Now we'll move on to the Formula One and the Japanese Grand Prix, where Max Verstappen managed to come out on top. But it wasn't all, quite plain sailing. It wasn't all as it seemed either. Very wet conditions for the drivers as well, which, didn't wasn't easy for them. The red flag also came out, especially only after a couple of laps in. I don't know if you can give us any more insights onto that.
Firstly, it was just an extremely wet day, and you could argue not particularly safe for those races. Quite a few people failed to finish, but yeah, very controversial once again. Max Verstappen likes to win a title in controversial fashion, doesn't he? Blimey, after last season. But this time, I think it was a matter of time. Where it has happened an interesting race here in Japan, which only sort of just went halfway over the scheduled amount of laps. There was a lot of confusion whether or not there would be full points awarded for this, because as I just said, it was only just over half a distance. So Max Verstappen, when he crossed the line, they told him, his team Red Bull principal told him that he was world champion. He replied saying, "Are you sure?" So that says all you need to know really. But then the celebrations did continue after that. Bit of a confusion in F1. I mean, there's been a bit of controversy recently. I think overall the fan base seems to be slightly frustrated at the teams as well, and the drivers at the slight inconsistencies, shall we say. And now, to make it even more controversial, the newly crowned two-time world champion has his first title under investigation following allegations that Red Bull broke the financial fair play rules, which is now being investigated. So, yeah, whilst this title is pretty conclusive, it's now looking like his first title may be stripped. So we'll keep you up to date as the news unfolds on that one.
Definitely. Also, didn't seem like much use of wet weather tyres either. With a lot of drivers, it seemed to be slipping around quite a few times for a lot of drivers.
Yeah, there were some drivers which went to intermediates. I know the very experienced Sebastian Vettel switched. It worked quite well, relatively speaking, for him. But there was some big crashes. I mean, Ferrari once again failing to get two cars over the line, and right at the end, you had Charles Leclerc go off from second place off the track and incur a 5-second penalty to push him down to third and give Red Bull the 1-2 with Verstappen and Perez. So yeah, interesting race to what's been a pretty dominant season really for Red Bull and Max Verstappen, and I'm hoping next season really, for a neutral fan, we can see a bit more competitive racing.
Definitely. I do think, with all the controversy, though, I do think Max Verstappen did deserve to win that. He has had some very good races recently, and well deserved title as well. So we'll talk about the boxing now, or the lack thereof of boxing, with some not so good news around the Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. fight. Do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, it's another sad day for boxing, a sport which really seems to be slipping with boxing fans and the general public alike. Unfortunately, this fight's been tainted with controversy from the start, with Chris Eubank Sr. coming out and explaining how he didn't want his son to take this fight with the catch weight of 157 agreed and the rehydration clause in place. He didn't think it was safe, and it was yet to be seen whether he'd actually have any involvement in the fight. But it's actually Conor Benn who caused the fight to be postponed or cancelled due to a failed drugs test, with the British Boxing Board of Control coming out saying that this fight wasn't in the interest of boxing anymore. So it's yet to be seen whether he'll be suspended. We'll see. I hope that he receives a fair punishment for this one, because we can't have any steroids or banned substances in sport.
No, definitely not. But there was some confusion around the drug tests, because he had one that came back negative, but then he voluntarily did another one which also came back positive. So he essentially put himself, put himself in admission that he was on drugs or steroids.
Yeah, it's a very strange situation. One I don't know too much about. I need to find out a little bit more before I comment too much on that. But it does seem to be that it was an independent drugs test which came back positive, and hence why he's not yet been banned by the British Boxing Board of Control. But we'll see what comes out from this one. I'd imagine, it'll all become clearer in the coming week or so.
Also, big news around Tyson Fury, and obviously the AJ fight looking like it's not going to go ahead anymore. But he has offered a contract to Derek Chisora. What were your thoughts on that fight?
Well, Tyson Fury, I don't think you can really have any thoughts or take him too seriously. I mean, is he retired? Is he active? Who's he going to fight? Who knows? I mean, this is a man who seems more indecisive than any other sort of athlete out there. It's interesting. I mean, first of all, he wanted the AJ fight, or allegedly wanted the AJ fight, which turned out to be, well, on paper, a very good deal for AJ, but Fury making unrealistic time frames. I mean, you got to remember these guys have big commercial deals and have competing broadcasters as well, with DAZN and BT, or DAZN for AJ and BT for Fury. So it was never going to be quick to make, and Fury coming out saying he has a day to sign the contract is just ridiculous. You could argue that it broke down from either side, but ultimately it's not looking like it's going to happen.
But it's also not looking promising if Chisora does sign the contract either. I mean, he's lost the last 3 of his 4 fights, including a convincing loss to Usyk there. So it's not really looking very good for him if he does sign the contract anyway.
No, I mean, I don't know why he would want Derek Chisora. I mean, Fury came out publicly on his Instagram again and said that he believes that Chisora is as big a threat as Usyk, which is just laughable, really. I mean, their fight, which happened, blimey, when did the fight happen? It was 2020. I got it here in front of me now. So it happened a couple of years ago, and Chisora isn't getting any younger. He's 38 now, and back then Usyk convincingly got the unanimous decision over him in his debut heavyweight fight as well. So, Chisora at best is a gatekeeper for the heavyweight division, really should not be challenging for this title. I mean, he's lost, like you said, 3 of his last 4. He beat Pulev in his last fight in a split decision in his only win, since 2019. So, yeah, I really can't understand why Fury's offered this fight. I mean, it's a trilogy fight as well, and Fury's already beaten him twice. So, what seems to be a pointless fight, and one which I don't think will be well supported from the boxing community.
Fury's a very strange character, though. He never seems to be able to make up his mind on what he's doing. So, knowing Fury, it probably won't even materialise, and there won't be a fight anyway.
No, I mean, he's claimed he's going to be fighting December 3rd. I actually think he will get in the ring. I think we will see him. I don't think it'll be against much of an opponent, whether it be Manuel Charr, who he's been verbally sparring with over the past couple of weeks, or now Chisora, I don't know. But in the other news as well, obviously Alexander Usyk's now come out and said that he might move back to cruiserweight. He's just completely fed up with this, which I can't blame him for, really. I mean, who knows if Fury's actually going to be able to get in the ring with someone like that. I mean, whilst Fury's still undefeated, he's not really had that big a test. I mean, he's had Klitschko, who he did extremely well to beat in Germany, but other than that, he's fought Wilder, who technically isn't very proficient and has put Fury in his ass a couple of times. So I feel like we've still got a bit more to see from Fury before we put him down as one of the best of this generation in the heavyweight division.
Well, he's apparently retired, so I'm not sure he is going to be the best of his division anytime soon.
No, I think this is it. I don't think he anticipated Usyk coming up. I think if Usyk didn't come up, he could have cleaned out this division. I mean, I feel like he is better than AJ, and I feel like he's obviously better than the likes of Chisora, who he's already beaten a couple of times, but he didn't anticipate Alexander Usyk coming up, who is in a lot of the professional opinions, and from what I hear from the pundits, a lot more about boxing. For me, the technically more able boxer, and while slightly smaller or far smaller, the slight favourite going into that contest. So yeah, I think that's what's holding him back. I know Usyk wants this contest, but I really think that Fury will do everything he can to avoid it.
Definitely agree with you there. We'll move on to the football now, and there's been quite a few games in the Premier League, with quite a few of them having quite a lot of goals. So we've had some exciting games we can discuss. But the first game we'll discuss is Bournemouth winning 2-1 against Leicester. I mean, Leicester are looking in big trouble going into the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's been a terrible start for Leicester. Of course, just recording 1 win and 1 draw after 9 games. So they are second bottom now, just above Nottingham Forest. They actually started off really brightly and went into half-time winning, but 2 second-half goals from Philip Billing and Ryan Christie for Bournemouth gave them all 3 points. Bournemouth also needed some points themselves as well, but looking slightly better than this poor Leicester side at the moment.
What do you reckon? Brendan Rodgers in trouble as well?
He's done very well at the club, so I think they'll give him as much time as they possibly can, but surely the results don't sort of start to improve, and certainly if they don't improve by Christmas, I think there's going to be only one way for him to go, and that's going to be out the door.
Unfortunately, so it's a bit of a shame, really, because obviously, like you say, he's done pretty well for the club. But anyway, the next result was Chelsea won 3-0 against Wolves, and Diego Costa returned as well. That was quite an exciting game.
Yeah, the fans almost sort of as a testimonial, I think, towards the end. They gave him a really good reception, probably because he didn't score, and Chelsea were comfortable winners in that game. Goals from Havertz, Pulisic, and Brozier for Chelsea gave him a comfortable win, and it was the American Christian Pulisic's first goal of the season. Hopefully for Chelsea, he'll come into form now for a team which I think has definitely got room to grow. They'll be still pushing towards a top 4 finish. And things are starting to look a bit better for Graham Potter.
But Wolves are in trouble as well. They're near the relegation zone, aren't they?
Yeah, so Wolves actually just in the relegation zone now. I know it's only after 9 games, only picking up 1 win in 9 with 3 draws. So yeah, Wolves looking in big trouble. Obviously, they've got a new manager now, so things might turn up. And if Diego Costa can find some form, he could be the difference between staying up and or going down. So yeah. Interesting time for Wolves, but the fans will definitely hope for better.
Yeah, definitely. And the other one of the big scoring games was Man City beat Southampton 4-0. I mean, obviously, you had a Cancelo which had a few goals and assists, and you also had Haaland which scored again as well.
Yeah, talking about fantasy football there. So it was it ever really in doubt, Man City? I mean, you never know what can happen in football, but I think that's pretty much as sure as you can get. But they were going to beat a quite weak Southampton team this season. And as you rightly say, I had Cancelo, who did, I think, got 18 points, a goal and assist, and assisting Haaland, who was also my captain. Although I think someone played their triple captain this week.
I did. I played triple captain with Haaland, so I was sweeped in a few points there.
Yeah, so along with, obviously, like we just said, Cancelo and Haaland, we also had goals for Foden and Mahrez. They shared up the scoring a bit after their double hat-trick last time out. So, a few more people getting on the score sheet for City. But, his team looking extremely strong. And of course, KDB had a bit of an achievement. Shall I pass you over? Do you want to explain that one?
Yeah, he's now got the most assists for Man City. He goes above David Silva, so that's obviously a big achievement for him, and he's very very good when it comes to assisting the game.
Yeah, and with the team they've got, it looks like he's only going to get more as well. I mean, he's one of the few who Pep doesn't seem to rotate too much. I mean, they've got such strength in depth in that midfield as well. But with Haaland sitting in the 6-yard box, I think he'll get a few more assists this season.
Definitely, he's looking very strong. The biggest game of all though was Newcastle Brentford. Newcastle managed to win 5-1. Obviously, there was a few controversial moments in this game with a goal disallowed for Brentford first.
Our biggest in terms of scoreline, anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it was a really controversial one with Brentford actually taking, or initially looking like they were going to take the lead with a disallowed goal for offside against Ivan Toney, who didn't touch the ball but was deemed to be involved in play. So we'll put that up on the social media pages for you to have a look and give your own opinion. I mean, I think he did interfere with play. I know we disagree on this one.
Yeah, I don't think it was an offside because he didn't really touch the ball and it wasn't an in play. I don't think he was in play. He didn't really touch the ball, but rules are rules. So yeah, it's the way it goes.
We'll see what you think on that one. You can give your opinion and make sure you drop us a comment as well. Ivan Toney did get on the score sheet via penalty later on, but it wasn't enough for Newcastle. It wasn't enough for Brentford with Newcastle, romping them by 5-1. So the star of the show, Bruno Guimaraes, he was superb. I mean, diving header and a shot from outside the box to get a double for him there. Fantastic football, and he'll be really pleased to have found some form in this ever-strengthened Newcastle team. We move up to 5th. And then again, early days, but they could really challenge for some European places this year, potentially even top 4.
Definitely, they seem to be doing a lot better since they've had the new ownership of the club.
Yeah, very controversial, obviously. I mean, Newcastle fans, for the most part, I imagine, wouldn't mind too much, but obviously the Saudi Arabian investment fund, not liked by all. I mean, I'm personally not a massive fan of having that type of money in the game for multiple reasons. But we won't get too political in this podcast. We'll quickly move on to the next game, I think.
We'll save it before you get too distracted. I know your thoughts on that one. Next game was a pretty standard game. Brighton losing 1-0 to Tottenham. Obviously, Kane scoring again, adding to his record. You got any thoughts on that game?
I mean, of all the games that day, it wasn't the most eventful. I mean, a Kane goal assisted by Son Heung-min, if I can get the words out properly. I'm just going to say Son from now on. I think that's much easier, isn't it? Yeah, Son into Kane. So, and then they paid tribute to their fitness coach who sadly passed away as well during the week unexpectedly as well. So, for Spurs, quite an emotional day there. But Conte overall, I think, will be pleased with the result. I mean, Brighton aren't the easiest side to go and visit and come away with 3 points. As of Brighton, they're still looking relatively strong. I mean, they'll have to keep the points ticking over this season and to look to push on. But it'd be interesting to see how they get on without Graham Potter.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see, obviously, how that progresses and how that goes. And the next game was Crystal Palace beating Leeds 2-1 now. They're both bottom end of the table, and it was, quite a must-win game for both sides because, the game was definitely a must-win for both sides. What were your thoughts?
I must say, I didn't watch this one. I haven't actually had a chance to even look at the highlights unlike the other games, so I can't give too much of an opinion on the actual play. But Crystal Palace, the home side, they'll be pleased to have picked up the 3 points. As for Leeds, I don't think it's panic stations yet for them. They've done quite well this season. I think they'll bounce back.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. The next game was West Ham beating Fulham 3-1. I mean, West Ham have had some tricky results, some tricky fixtures, but with David Moyes as well, looking to make them quite strong at the moment. But yeah, 3-1 against Fulham, that's obviously a good result for them. One of the biggest games as well was Arsenal beating Liverpool 3-2. Now, there was a few moments in that game that were quite controversial as well.
Yeah, it's a weekend full of controversy, wasn't it? Blimey. Arsenal ended up, I think, deserved winners. There was some appeals there for a Liverpool penalty, which wasn't given. I mean, there was an Arsenal penalty which was given. So, um, Saka putting that one away nicely which actually proved to be the difference in the end. But it had Martinelli's goal right at the start, which was how many seconds in was it?
Was it 45?
It was within a minute, and it was the fastest goal Arsenal scored against Liverpool in the Premier League. And this Arsenal side, extremely young. I think about 3 or 4 years on average younger than their Liverpool counterparts. Really proving to be strong. I don't think many people would have expected to see them above Man City in the table. I mean, if you look at the team sheet, they're captained by Martin Odegaard, who's only 23 himself, and he's one of the older players in the team. So, it's a strong side. I don't personally think they'll have enough to maintain this all season, but we'll see. And I think that they're definitely looking like a top 2, top 3 side this year.
Definitely, they've definitely improved over the seasons, and it's been good for Arsenal, but Liverpool aren't doing quite so well, which is obviously shocking quite a few people after what happened last season. They're down in 10th at the moment, so they don't seem to be doing that well.
No, I mean you look through that Liverpool side, and it's very similar to the one which almost did the quadruple last season. But the one big difference, of course, is Sadio Mane, and I think the lack of Sadio Mane in that team, obviously going to Bayern Munich, shows a massive hole. And he was influential in that side, and Salah may have got the headlines, but Mane was equally a part of that team for me. Defensively, questions asked again about Alexander Arnold. I mean, he's had a lot of hits recently, and I think rightly so. I mean, his performance once again, he was at fault for 2 of the goals. He was subbed off at half time, and they've got a strong defence. I mean, obviously headed by Virgil van Dijk, who's arguably the best defender, one of the best defenders in the world, but they just can't keep the goals out at the moment. And Alisson in goal once again. Not having a bad game necessarily, but seeing 3 goals go past them, they need to change.
They've also got Luis Diaz, who's now injured as well. He came off just before halftime, but he might not be there for their next game, so that could put a bit of impact on the side as well. The last game that was played on Sunday was Everton 1, Man United 2. Now, that was obviously Everton did take the lead, which was shocked, quite a few people at the moment, but you can give us some more insight on that game.
Yeah, so the first goal, Casemiro at fault coming into this team. I don't think anyone would have expected him to be the man to make the mistake. I mean, Alex Iwobi, a really nice finish to round off the goal, but really poor start for him, although he did redeem himself later on in the game, which we'll get to. It wasn't long before Antony equalised for Man United, and it was a good goal, nicely worked, good interplay for Manchester United actually. The goal did look like it was coming, and then after that, with the scores tied at 1-1, it really was one-way traffic. Man United looking like they were going to be the more likely of the 2 teams to score with very limited chances for Everton, who struggled, only had about 40% possession, just under that in the game. And it was none other than Cristiano Ronaldo with a bit of a stat as well. I mean, it was a big goal for him.
Definitely a 700th club goal of his career.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's just incredible, isn't he? I mean, he's... I can't, whether or not he's better than Messi, let's not bother getting into that. Let's just respect the guy for what he's achieved. I mean, 700 career goals. I mean, he's played at Sporting Lisbon, Real Madrid, Juventus, and of course, now returning to Manchester United. Unbelievable player. And I mean, he's still doing it at 37 years old. And it was a lovely goal. And it was assisted by Casemiro, who won the ball back in the middle of the park, put a beautiful pass in. Cristiano Ronaldo, still with some work to do off the left boot, bottom left-hand corner of the goal. Fantastic. And like I said, I'm not a Manchester United fan, but it's really good to see Cristiano Ronaldo back performing. I can't see Manchester United really doing too much, even with him in the side this year, as terms of a title challenge or is concerned. They'll be hoping to push on and see if they can cement maybe 3rd or more than likely 4th. But yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo showing no signs of slowing up anytime soon.
No, he's definitely been a credit to the team, but who knows how long he's going to stay at Man United if they're not in Champions League football or not qualifying for these big events. Who knows how long he's going to be in the club for?
No, I mean, he pushed for a move, didn't he? It looked like at the start of the season. He's a very calculated man, I think, what he's trying to do there. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did leave next season. The big question is where to. I mean, it's looking very likely that Messi is going to be moving to Barcelona again, which just seems like a good fit again, doesn't it? Seems right, but does that potentially free up a place at Paris Saint-Germain for Ronaldo? Does he want to see if he can go and win the French league? He's a man to sort of tour around and win these sort of perceived Premier divisions across Europe, winning in England, Italy, and of course multiple times in Spain. So yeah, it'd be an interesting time for him, and he want to obviously add that record-beating 6th Champions League to his locker if he can.
Definitely. And obviously one game being played later on today is Forest Villa. Now, that's definitely a must-win game for Forest because they're currently bottom of the table.
Yeah, Forest, they really haven't started very well. Of course, signing 22 new players, a lot of uncertainty at the club. I don't think they know what their best team is yet. Steven Gerrard's finally getting this Villa side backfiring again. I mean, he's really brought in Tyrone Mings, who's been a bit of a defensive rock for him as well after he got stripped of the captaincy earlier on in the season. So it looks like a tale of a side which is improving or is improving to a point, hopefully, where they can push on and have a good season. As for Forest, like you say, this is a big game for them at home. They really need to get themselves into gear and get some points on the board.
Definitely, and the best result they've done against Villa is a 2-2 draw. They haven't beaten them at all. So that was back in 1998. So we're talking a long time ago.
Before you were born. So since you're born, we haven't had a Forest win against Villa. I can only see it going one way. But it's with Forest playing at home, you've got to give them an outside chance. But I know that a lot of people will be rightly favouring Villa in that game, myself included.
Definitely. Well, it's been an interesting weekend of football anyway. So, yeah, there's we'll put some of the controversial clips up on the social media pages for you to like and comment as well. Oh, and we've just had some breaking news about the Formula One. Do you want to give us that news?
Yeah, well, it's literally just come up now, and I'll bring it to you. Appreciate you won't be listening to this live, and you may already have heard this when it comes out, but it's breaking for us, and that's Red Bull have been found guilty of a budget cap breach. We all knew that there was some speculation going on there. I mean, Mercedes were adamant that there were a couple of teams who breached this and there needs to be action. Christian Horner, the team principal from Red Bull, strongly denying it, but it's now been found out that they have exceeded the $145 million or 114 million pound limit for the 2021 season. So, yeah, for me, I don't quite understand what this is going to mean, but I know that there was talk of a potential points deduction, which of course could influence massively the standings from the last season and hand Hamilton the title.
Definitely. It'll be interesting to see what the results are, and we'll keep you updated on that. But there was only a small, they only went over it by 5%, so it was only the equivalent of $7.25 million. So it wasn't like loads, but obviously if it does influence the race and the way that they, have the race then and the car, makes it faster or gives them a higher advantage, then, they need to be punished for that.
Definitely. Mercedes have also said, Toto Wolff has come out, hasn't he, and said that any breach would affect the season, not just the previous season, but also this season and the following season. He reckons about a 3-year plan. Of course, he would say that now. But I can understand his point. I mean, Mercedes had to lay off 40 people. They said going into this season to get within the budget. But it does seem to be Red Bull and also one other team, which have yet to be named, have breached this cap. So a potential, a fine is almost definite. But the big question is, will the points be adjusted? And if so, it's looking very likely that they'll be stripped of their drivers' championship last season, with Max Verstappen now a 2-time champion, potentially going back to a 1.
It could be very interesting to see what happens with Max Verstappen there, but that's going to be big news that as it unfolds, we'll definitely keep you updated on. But yeah, that's sort of it for the football now. Just before we finish the pod, we do have the full-time scores from the rugby that was live earlier in the pod. So I think we were right on one of them, but wrong on the other one. Is that correct?
That is correct, and you won't be surprised to hear that the one we were correct on was the Saracens result. They went up to Newcastle and beat them 34 points to 14, got the bonus point win there in convincing fashion to return to the top of the Premiership. Wasps, on the other hand, couldn't hold on, and they actually went down 36-40 to Northampton. So Wasps at the bottom end of the table now, just above Bath there, so not looking too good for them. As for Northampton, that helps push them up into the top half of the table.
Still not below Bath, though, are they?
No, I mean, if Worcester was still in the table, they would still be above Bath. So really not a very good time to be a Baths fan. Not a brilliant time to be a Wasps fan either. But if you're a Saracens fan, you can sleep easy tonight. They return to the top of the Premiership and moving above Sale onto 20 points.
Thank you all for listening to the All Round Sports podcast. Obviously, the podcast that talks about all round sports news. I'll be back on Friday with a sports preview show of what promises to be a very exciting upcoming week of sports. So we'll be going through all that relevant action there and obviously giving a few predictions on the scores and the latest action of there as well. Just remember to like and subscribe to the pod if you've enjoyed this episode. Also exciting news as well, as we're now also found on social media. So it's at All Round Sports Podcast on Facebook and at All Round Sports Podcast as well on Instagram. So that's our two social media platforms as well, where we'll be posting all the moments like we've mentioned previously in the pod. So you can like and comment on them and give us your thoughts on what that is as well. And you'll also be able to find the big sporting news results as well. Obviously, we'll put some funny and unique clips up there for those of you that are interested. So do make sure you check those pages out. Thank you all again for tuning into the All Round Sports Podcast. I've been your host, Gemma, and I hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back again later in the week for a preview show and then obviously do the standard roundup show after the weekend of sport.